One Piece took to the front of the magazine this week with a shot of Manga Luffy hanging out with live-action Luffy. I'm trying to see just how many of you guys are actually planning on giving the Netflix version a shot, so comment live Luffy if you are, or dive Luffy if you aren't. We also received a color spread featuring some of the major East Blue events we can expect to see from the show. This might be the first time Oda's drawn anything Captain Kuro related in decades. Also, am I tripping, or did Garp not show up in the story until way later? I don't know if that implies we're getting a more Romance Dawn sort of focus or not. It could just be the typical shifting of events, but I haven't been keeping up with the latest live action news, so if you know, feel free to share the knowledge. One Piece Chapter 1088, titled The Final Lesson, begins with a flashback at the former Navy headquarters. Way back when, Garp was asking some of the young Marine cadets a hypothetical question. He wondered what they would do if a baby and an old man were stranded on an island home to many dangerous beasts, and they were on a boat that could only hold 2 people on it. After rising to attention, Kobe was pelted with a marker by Garp for saying that he would get off the boat and ensure that the victims could make it to safety. According to the hero of the Marines, and much to the confusion of the class, that was totally wrong. Garp's answer was that they should abandon the old man. This was far from what his fellow Marine instructor considered appropriate conduct. Kobe held his head in confusion as Prince Gruss observed from behind. Garp sharply questioned why they'd all decided to become Marines in the first place. If they did so for the sake of protecting the future, the answer was clear. They're all young and able-bodied, so they'd have much more ahead of them than some old geezer. For the sake of the future, they should take the baby and live on. Sometime later, Garp was munching on a sandwich after being hit over the head with a club. His junior told him to never give a lecture like that again. The intended takeaway was that all lives are equal, which is pretty different from the doctrine of the celestial dragons they serve, but that's neither here nor there. Admiral Aokiji could only rub his own head as Garp barked back that the potential of youth is limitless. From there, we would flash forward a bit while still being a few weeks in the past, specifically on the island of women, Amazon Lily. The situation caused by Blackbeard's invasion was all too painful for the many Marines who cried out to Vice Admiral Yamakaji. Despite Blackbeard being an Emperor of the Sea, they wondered if they were really just going to sit back and watch their fellow officers be taken hostage. They didn't have permission to engage a Yonko, but the sight was unbearable. The many captured Marines cried out in dismay. They could only imagine the horrors that awaited them back on the pirate island of Hachinosu. But before Blackbeard and his forces could depart, Kobe stepped toward them. Teach wondered what the young hero could possibly want. He even questioned if the boy was bold enough to kick off an all-out war. The Vice Admiral called out to the engaging young captain, but just then, he'd be informed that Kobe was a member of SWORD, meaning he's technically off the books, and the Marines can denounce all involvement with him at the drop of a hat. Plainly, Kobe asked if by taking their place as hostage, Blackbeard would be willing to free the Marine battleship and all 800 Marine personnel he had captured. The crying Marines were touched by the boy's sacrificial proposal. Blackbeard was interested in the trade, but figured that Kobe must be pretty damn full of himself to consider himself so valuable. Cause I mean, 800 Marines, and not only that, a battleship? Wow. From there, we finally transition to the present day on the island of Hachinosu. The many Marines aboard the fleeing ship were terrified by what they saw. A massive hand that had sprouted from the island was racing towards them. Side note, one of these Marines that isn't fully shown has a mouth that looks a lot like Apu's. I wonder if there's any connection or it's just a coincidence. They tried to intercept the attack with cannon fire, but it proved to be ineffective. So much so that they didn't even manage to make a scratch. Ultimately, there was nothing they could do to stop this thing. Tashigi told them all to prepare to abandon ship. It was currently a race to get them all above deck. And above all else, as Marines, they needed to protect the civilians. Rear Admiral Kujaku was beside herself as she observed the insane display of power with wide eyes. On the island itself, the situation wasn't especially great either. As Helmeppo and Prince Gruss stood their ground against the encroaching pirate forces, Garp laid on the ground while Kobe remained in a state of panic. The lives of hundreds of Marines and civilians were in danger now thanks to the island's massive hand. He called out to Vice Admiral Garp, wondering what they should do. With a smile on his face, Garp confidently told his young students that they'd be just fine. They couldn't believe their ears, but Garp didn't stop there. He'd tell them to prepare themselves since he would be giving them an opening. His instructions were straightforward and simple. He said that Kobe would have to be the one to handle the island monster's hand and break it apart. This only made Kobe panic more since his target was so overwhelmingly large. Prince Grust's job was to protect the ship from any falling debris that would result from Kobe's attack. And lastly, Helmeppo was expected to make sure that no one gets in their way. Kobe would begin to express his doubt towards handling such a major task, but Garp would interrupt him. He'd tell the young Marine never to second guess himself in the heat of the moment. Hearing these final words, Kobe's eyes went wide. Once Garp told them to go, they all agreed and swiftly did so. The rampaging pirate extras would mention how Kobe's group was on the move, but without Garp's help, they were hardly a concern to any of them. As far as they could tell, Kobe's moniker of hero was nothing but talk for a glorified newbie. To them, the group was easy pickings. Helmeppo stood against them by his lonesome as Kobe and Grust raced forward. Grust wondered if Kobe had some explosives on him or something like that to get the job done, but Kobe admitted that he didn't. Without them, all he knew was that he'd have to figure something out. But hearing that alone was not enough to satisfy Grust, considering the sheer size of their target. A crazed pirate with a cannon launcher cried out that Kobe would not be getting away from them. Knowing that they had been spotted, Helmeppo followed the cannonball's trajectory. It was then that he recalled what Vice Admiral Garp had just said to him. It was his job to make sure that no one gets in his comrade's way. Now rushing to intercept the attack, he knew that all he needed to do was buy them some time. Hearing his friend's pained outcry and seeing the explosive fallout, Kobe turned his attention elsewhere and called out to him. But Grust insisted that Kobe not look back. Garp was now standing completely surrounded and had the blood from his wound dripping down. Kuzan wondered what the old man thought he was doing with such a grave wound. Still smiling, Garp let his former student know that this was just a scratch. Hearing this, Kuzan admitted that he was worrying for nothing. But as he said that, in an instant, Garp blitzed towards the former admiral and claimed this to be proof that the man was still soft. Kuzan was shocked. In the next moment, the ice user had been laid out on the ground as Garp continued his legendary jaunt towards the sea of pirates ahead of him. Garp was colliding with building after building, breaking them each in the process. Avalo Pizarro was in utter dismay. The smile never left Garp's face as he reeled back a hockey-enhanced fist while looking at the huge stone skull. Despite his fear, Avalo resolved to focus on sinking the enemy ship. With the power of Galaxy Divide, Garp practically split the face of the island in two. None of the pirates could believe their eyes and wondered if that was truly just a punch. Avalo himself began to bleed from the damage he had suffered. Kobe concluded that this must be the opening Garp was talking about. And now that the Vice Admiral had made his move, Prince Grust wondered what Kobe would do to fulfill the major task ahead of him. Shouting with conviction, Kobe proclaimed that he would live up to the old man's expectations. He then leapt off into the air before shifting trajectory on a dime with Geppo. Barely holding his skull face together now, Avalo taunted Garp for thinking that would be enough to put him down. Angry, he decided to teach Garp a lesson by wiping out everyone aboard the ship. As Garp remained suspended in the air, he remembered times from the past. Long ago, he asked Helmeppo a question. It was clear to him that Kobe had been improving a whole lot lately, but at the same time, he couldn't help but notice that Kobe always looked beaten up and had bandages on his arm all the time too. Simultaneously, the pirates down below were able to notice Kobe walking on air as he moved towards the island's hand. Laughing, they figured that his reputation as a hero must have gotten to his head. But Garp's smile was huge as he recalled Helmeppo's response. Apparently, Kobe told him not to say anything, but Helmeppo answered anyways. Kobe always knew that compared to everyone else, he had absolutely no natural skill when it came to combat. Because of that, even working 10 times harder wasn't going to cut it. He would need to put in 200 times more effort than everyone else. He knew that he would need to keep training or he would not be able to protect anyone. If he couldn't even do that much, he would never be able to become a great Marine. Garp could not believe his ears, that even after his special training regimen, Kobe had been sneaking off to work out even more. Helmeppo confirmed this and said that Kobe never misses a day, no matter how much it hurts or how much he tries to convince him not to. Day after day, Kobe would spend the entire night hitting one of the battleship bags until his fists peeled and bled. Garp had nothing but faith in Kobe's abilities. Avalo laughed at Kobe. Compared to the size of his island hand, the Marine was about the size of an ant. Watching, Captain Hibari feared for Kobe's safety. Kobe prepared himself while recalling Garp's faith in them. Avalo continued to laugh, saying that he would be able to enjoy the dying screams of the Marines. That even if they were able to jump overboard, Kuzan would still be able to freeze them all. Yeah, I see why this man needed to be locked up and impaled down. Kujaku feared the worst and told the crew to sail as fast as they could, but this was as far as they could do for the moment, and they wouldn't be able to stop the attack. Gruss wasn't sure what Kobe could do here, but he knew that the kid needed to do something. Haki began to ripple from Kobe's fist as he thought of all the people he needed to protect. And not just any Haki. This is not only armament Haki, but conqueror's Haki. He refused to let them die. And with that, honesty, impact. With calamitous power, Kobe utterly obliterated the massive hand with a single punch. What an unbelievable feat of strength for the hero of the Marines. Again, the pirates could not believe their eyes. Avalo retched in pain as his arm bled terribly. Tashigi couldn't believe that this was really the same Kobe that she knew. Hibari was holding back tears on account of how incredible Kobe was. The other Marines aboard were cheering for him now, but wondered what would be done about all the falling debris. Freed from his self-doubt and empowered by his conviction, Kobe had pushed himself further than ever before. Garp cried with laughter and joy at the sight, while Helmeppo cried with beaming pride at how unbelievable all of this was. Gruss was shocked to see that Kobe had been hiding his true power all along. Completely spent, Kobe began falling. With a massive clay web, Gruss was able to stop the falling rubble from hitting the ship. Helmeppo went as fast as he could. Grabbing Kobe with tears in his eyes, he'd tell his friend how amazing he was. Kobe couldn't believe he'd done it either. According to Helmeppo, that arm was as large as a mountain, and Kobe blew it apart with a single punch. And I'm sure the power scalers will have a field day with that. This is possibly even more impressive than what Zoro did to Pika on Dressrosa. With the rubble handled, the ship was finally in the clear. Happy, the crew exclaimed that they just needed Vice Admiral Garp to make his way over and they would be clear to leave. Everyone was overjoyed and thanking their savior. Even Hibari couldn't help herself from leaping onto Kobe, who was happy to see that she was safe. But to interrupt the festivities, Tashigi received a call from Garp. Their mission to save Kobe was a success. Tashigi confirmed his words and told him to make his way back as soon as possible so they would be able to depart. Instead, Garp commanded that all troops withdraw from Hachinosu, effective immediately. He would figure something out. At the end of the day, in situations like these, ensuring the safety of youngsters like them was always the top priority. He then asked if they finally understood his lessons from the past. Upset, Kobe insisted that they turn around right away. Garp continued as Prince Gruss began to cry. Their success here would be known to be a major blow to pirates everywhere. So, it was important that they keep moving forward. And as Blackbeard's many forces crowded around him with a massive icicle sprouting from his abdomen, Garp told his forces to never forget that they are all the future of the Marines. Then, he hung up. Kuzan coldly and solemnly watched his former teacher. There laid Garp, laughing with a bright smile. The following day, it would be reported in the paper that the legendary hero of the Marines, Vice Admiral Garp, was missing in action on Pirate Island after the successful rescue of the young hero of the Marines, Captain Kobe. But despite the gravity of this news, another story would also grab the world's attention, what would come to be known as the Egghead Incident. The story of the legendary hero's emperor of a grandson, Straw Hat Luffy, facing off against a Marine siege on the island of the future. We're on break next week, but it is finally time for us to return to the Straw Hats. Oh my goodness, what a chapter. We have waited so many years for Kobe's potential to be realized, and we are finally here. And for Garp to be getting the same treatment as Ace like this is a different kind of hurt. Even if it's still a long way off, the gears are finally turning for the end of the series. Leave us all your thoughts on everything in the comments. Shout out to Garp Man, and shout out to Kobe too. Two of the greatest Marines of all time. As always, I'm Celestial Taku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.